This is why you should choose your friends wisely. I work at a hotel and around 3 p.m. this guest came to check into her prepaid reservation. Despite it being prepaid, we have a $300 security deposit that's mandatory. Her card was declining for the deposit, so we couldn't check her in. She left around 4 p.m. and came back at 11 p.m. with her friend. Her friend spent $100 on an Uber to come to our hotel and put his card down for the deposit so that she could check in. Then he had to Uber back and spend another $100. The next morning, she brought me down a piece of paper filled top to bottom with her demands. She wanted her entire stay comped, additional nights comped in the future, and she wanted free room service. Her reasoning? We didn't let her check in due to her card being declined. We had a back and forth conversation about how I couldn't give her any of those things because her card declined. She kept saying things like, "So you're basically blaming me for everything?" and how she was a movie producer from London who was traveling, which is why her card declined. When she realized that I wasn't budging, she left the front desk. Luckily, that day was her checkout date, so we wouldn't have to deal with her for much longer. Or so I thought. She called a little later and asked for a late checkout. I told her I couldn't offer that to her because every room was booked up. She got mad and hung up on me. Around 11 a.m., security informed me that a guest was outside bothering the other guest. While I'm walking over, a few hotel guests tell me that a crazy lady is bothering them. As I walk up to her, she's sitting with 2 random guests. I asked the gentleman if they're okay. They said, it's fine, we're okay. Which is when the lady tells me, "The only person bothering them is you." I ignore her and double check with the other guests who confirm that they're okay. That's when she says, "Bye, you can go now." To which I replied, "Remember, checkout is at 12. Oh, and if another guest complains about you bothering them, you'll be kicked out of the pool." Eventually, 12 p.m. checkout time hits. I send security to her room first as part of the do-outs. They inform me that her bags are all over the room, but she's not there. We smell cigarettes in her room, and after an inspection, find out that she's been extensively smoking in the room. That's a $500 fee. I authorize the $500 on her friend's card since it's the only one that we have on file. 1 p.m. hits, then 2, and finally she arrives at 6 p.m. I post a $300 checkout fee to her room as well, along with the resort fee totaling $850. When she came back, we told her we couldn't release her things until the cardholder signs authorization for the charges. This is when she throws a huge tantrum and leaves. However, it doesn't end there. The next day, I get a call from the crazy lady's friend asking why he's being charged $850. I tell him everything and he's in shock. He said that she's having a midlife crisis right now and her mental state isn't normal at the moment. He then said the $850 charge is outrageous, followed by not knowing what he signed up for when he put his card down. I told him that putting his card down for her was essentially him taking responsibility for her reservation. I explained that I feel bad about it, but charging his card wasn't my decision. I also said that since we couldn't release her items to her, her bags are still in the room. Also, that the card on file will continue to be charged for each day the bags remain in the room. We'll only move the bags out of the room once we get an authorization form signed for the charges. He said he'd gladly pay the $350 for the late checkout, but the $500 smoking fee was too much. He threatened to open a dispute with his bank if he's charged for the full $850. I spoke to my general manager and the most we could do was offer him 50% off of the smoking fee. I also let him know that if he tried to dispute the charges, the hotel would pursue payment in court. He ended up accepting and signing for the charges. We took her bags out of the room and the crazy lady came to pick them up at 3 in the morning. Overall, I just felt really bad for her friend. I just found out that my daughter is engaged and getting married to a man who is 20 years older than her. She's 19 and he's almost 40. Apparently, she's been seeing this man for the last 6 months and recently announced their engagement. I am in disbelief. What makes it worse is that she had confided in my sister, her aunt, about this when she first started seeing this guy. My sister encouraged her to do what makes her happy and basically pushed her into this relationship. Now she swears up and down that he's the love of her life and they're meant to be. She just told me about the relationship 2 weeks ago because she said she knew her father and I wouldn't be okay with it and was afraid of my reaction. She wanted me to meet her future husband before she introduced him to the rest of the family, so she invited me to brunch with them. When I arrived, I could instantly tell that this man knew what he was doing. I can't fathom what a 19-year-old and a 40-year-old have in common. I know this man as well off from the way he spoke about work. I could feel my teeth grate every time he put his hand on my daughter's lap, and it made me extremely uncomfortable to see them affectionate towards each other. Throughout the entire brunch, I was biting my tongue. However, when he mentioned that he wanted to purchase a house in another state for them to start a family soon after the wedding, I lost it. Things got extremely heated from here. My daughter is 19 and engaged to a 40-year-old who she's been dating for 6 months. At brunch, he mentioned that he was going to move them to another state and start a family soon after the wedding. This was my breaking point. This man already has been married 3 times and has a few children from those marriages. He's also closer to my age than her age, and his children are closer to her age. My daughter could tell that I was about to burst because she quickly tried to change the subject. However, I slammed my hand on the table and expressed how inappropriate this relationship is. I called this man out for basically grooming my daughter. My daughter quickly came to his defense, saying that age is just a number and that she's a consenting adult. I told her that I would never approve of this and left. My husband and I are furious about the situation and have tried telling our daughter that this is wrong. However, every time we try to talk to her about this, she blows up on us. She's made it clear that we can't talk her out of it and I'm at a loss. Now she's invited the rest of the family to dinner to meet her future husband. Everyone has been messaging me about it non-stop. Some are shocked about the age difference and others, like my sister, are telling me that I should stop trying to stand in the way of love. I want to shake my daughter into reality, but I feel that every time I mention my disapproval, it pushes her further towards him. Am I wrong and should I just accept this? This is why you should always double check your Uber's license plate. I was at my friend's apartment who lived in a really rough part of town. That night I had gotten super twisted and was partying it up with friends until 4 in the morning. For some reason, instead of staying the night like I normally would, I decided to Uber back to my own apartment. My friend's apartment had 2 separate entrances and exits to the building. One in the back unlit parking lot and one facing the street. They also had 2 sets of keys for each door and I only had the keys to the back of the apartment. My Uber was obviously going to arrive to the street, so I exited that way and the front door locked behind me. I'm a small, petite female in my early 20s and I can hardly stand upright. I propped myself up against the street lamp and waited for my Uber. I checked to see what car I was getting picked up and all I could make out was that it was a black sedan. Soon after stepping outside, a black sedan pulls up to the curb and the window rolls down. I could instantly feel like something was wrong. He had an expression like he was tearing me apart with his eyes. After seeing that look, I knew what it felt like to be prey. He basically barks at me that he's my Uber driver. This was a red flag because usually the Uber driver would confirm my name. I asked him, "What's my name?" He's immediately enraged and starts screaming about how he doesn't have effing time for this and just to get in the effing car. I've never sobered up faster in my life. This is when I quickly checked the license plate and it wasn't a match. After checking the car's license plate, I panicked when it wasn't a match. Meanwhile, this guy is still screaming at me and I have no idea what to do. If I was to bolt in either direction, this guy could easily outrun me or have a weapon. I couldn't run back inside my friend's apartment complex because the door had locked behind me and I didn't have the key. If I screamed, I'm not exactly in the type of neighborhood where someone would try to be a vigilante and I can still hear the music radiating from my friend's 3rd floor apartment. I knew they wouldn't hear me. It's 4 a.m. and no one is around. I was stuck. People talk about how they either sprint into action or freeze, but I felt incapable of doing either in that moment. It was the absolute worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. From when he started screaming until this point, about 20 seconds had passed. Just as he's getting out of the car, another black sedan pulls right up behind him. I ran over and checked the license plate. It was a match. I throw myself in and scream at the real Uber driver, "What's my name?" The poor dude looks terrified but says my name. I quickly reply, "Get me the F out of here, that man is trying to kidnap me." My dude flew out of there with no hesitation. He offered to call the cops, to which I declined and now regret, and then walked me to the front door of my apartment, ensuring that I got in safely. I gave him the fattest tip my college student bank account would allow. Story time about the craziest thing that happened to me while solo traveling. I never got to go anywhere when I was growing up. I never even left my hometown until I was old enough to make my own money. When I started working, I booked a trip to Europe with my first few paychecks and had an amazing time. After that, I got the travel bug and decided that I wanted to see the world and kept solo traveling. I decided I was going to Japan next because it's always been on my bucket list. I learned a few words in Japanese to get me by and hope for the best. I hopped on a plane from LAX and settled in for my 12-hour flight. As I was waiting for the plane to fill up, a young Asian guy took the seat right next to me. He was really handsome and I caught myself staring at him for a minute. I guess he caught me too because he ended up smiling back at me. I extended my hand and introduced myself. I immediately realized that he didn't speak English and he must have been visiting LA from Japan. We started talking using a translator on my phone. He told me his name was Haru. It turns out he owns a clothing brand in Tokyo and he was visiting LA for a business opportunity. We ended up talking and lightly flirting back and forth throughout most of the flight. He offered to show me around the city and take me to all the best spots when we arrived. Since I didn't know my way around, I gladly accepted his offer. If only I knew then what I was getting myself into. After a long but surprisingly fun flight, Haru and I arrived in Tokyo. He helped me find my bags and get me to my ride. We exchanged phone numbers and planned to meet up the next day. I couldn't wait to see him again and explore the city with a cute local. As soon as I met back up with Haru, I knew instantly that this man was well off. He picked me up in a flashy car and told me that he was taking me to his favorite restaurant in the city. I could tell that he was trying to impress me, and it was working. After we ate, he took me to some of the touristy places in Tokyo that I wanted to see, as well as some of the obscure local favorites he wanted to show me. It was challenging communicating using only a translator on my phone, but also kind of fun, and we made it work. I ended up seeing him every day I was in the city. By the second week, I was staying at his place instead of my hotel. Haru even convinced me to reschedule my flight and stay in the city at his place for an extra 2 weeks. By the end of the trip, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and of course I said yes. I definitely wasn't expecting to fall in love when I planned my trip to Tokyo, but here we are. Fast forward 3 years later and we're still together and happy. If you're planning to book that trip you've been dreaming about, just do it. You never know what you might miss out on. Imagine thinking that you're helping out a family friend, but they end up abducting you instead. This was the reality for a 15-year-old girl in Minnesota named Jasmine Block. An acquaintance of her family, a man named Thomas Barker, approached her on the night of August 8th, 2017 and told her that he needed help with a family situation. Since she knew him, she got in his car and he drove her to his house. Once they were inside, her nightmare began. Barker quickly tied her up with zip ties and then invited his roommate Joshua Holby and a third friend, Stephen Powers, to repeatedly assault her. These 3 men assaulted her and threatened her with weapons for a month. They didn't leave her side for 29 days and during this time she was kept in a bedroom closet. There were 2 different instances when they attempted to drown her in the bathtub, holding her head underwater, but she fought to stay alive. Another time during her captivity, they forced her to stand on a bucket with a rope around her neck and pushed her off the bucket until she couldn't breathe. A week into her kidnapping, there was a glimmer of hope when Barker had invited Powers to hang out with him but told him not to enter his room while staying over. One day, Powers decided to take a peek and found Block in the closet but never reported it. A few weeks after this, police knocked on the door to investigate a stolen vehicle, but no one answered. This is when the 3 men decided to shove Block into a duffel bag and move her to another location. Thomas Barker, Joshua Holby, and Stephen Powers took Jasmine Block to another location 30 miles away. They told her they were going to get food and would be back in an hour. This is the first time in 29 days that they had left her alone. She knew this might be her only opportunity at freedom and bravely took it. She ran door to door for help, but no one answered. That's when she spotted a property across the lake. She got in the water and swam across a portion of the 150-acre lake, sprinting through a field until she came to a residential area. That's when she came across a farmer who recognized her right away from the missing persons flyers in the area. She told him that she had been kidnapped and needed help. He helped her in his truck as he quickly called the police. When the police arrived, Block was getting out of the farmer's truck and entering the deputy's car when she recognized the car of one of her captors. Stephen Powers, Barker's friend who had found Block a week into her kidnapping in the closet but didn't report it, was immediately arrested right then and there. Thomas Barker and Joshua Holby were arrested shortly after. Barker was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Holby and Powers only got 8 years. Block later went on Dr. Phil to describe her kidnapping and multiple murder attempts. Dr. Phil offered to help Block overcome the after effects of her experience, which she accepted. I've been a divorced mom for the last 6 years. I was married to my ex for 15 and we had 4 kids, 1 bio and 3 adopted. We were doing really well with co-parenting up until he met his recent girlfriend. From the start, she made it obvious that she didn't like me and I truly don't know why. When we first met, I tried to introduce myself and she rolled her eyes at me and didn't talk to me the whole time. For months, I tried to make amends in case I did anything wrong, but she never responded to any of my messages. When I finally talked to her, it didn't go well. She cussed me out saying that I wasn't going to take her man. I told her that I didn't want him and I just wanted to get along for our kids' sake. She didn't care and slammed the door in my face. From then I just tried to keep the peace, which was hard to do because she would talk behind my back and post nasty things about me online, which almost cost me my job. The big problems, however, started 8 months ago. She started talking bad about me to my children and wouldn't stop no matter how many times I told her not to. Things really went south when one night she had the kids and made a roast for dinner. My youngest is deathly allergic to carrots and wasn't touching the food because she obviously didn't want to cause an allergic reaction. That's when she started screaming at my daughter, telling her that she needs to eat. My daughter explained that she was allergic, but she wasn't having it even after my other kids tried to tell her. However, she called my daughter a liar and wasn't taking no for an answer. After my daughter explained to my ex's new girlfriend that she's deathly allergic to carrots and that's why she's not eating her food, the girlfriend goes nuts. She accuses my daughter of lying even though my 3 other children back up my daughter about being allergic. She tells my daughter that she's going to sit there until she eats everything on the plate. Obviously, she didn't eat it and had to sit at the table, awake until school the next morning. When my ex's girlfriend came to the kitchen, she saw the uneaten food and my daughter who had fallen asleep at the kitchen table. She wakes her up by violently grabbing her arm and starts whipping her with a belt. Later that day, I picked up my kids from school and saw that my daughter was covered in bruises on her legs and her arms and she was half awake. I was furious when my kids explained what had happened. I don't hate my children and my youngest 3 were adopted out of abusive households, so I was terrified how this affected them. Aside from that, she had no right to put her hands on my children. I went to their house and argued with them for 2 hours. My ex has always agreed with me on this subject, but suddenly his stance changed and he told me that I was being dramatic. I left and took them to court. I won and she's not allowed near my children at all. However, this has now started drama within our family and friends. They're now engaged, so technically she would now be their stepmom. People are telling me to drop the restraining order and make amends because they're family now, but I don't know. I want to keep my kids safe. Should I give her a second chance? Story time about my darkest catfishing secret. I had just finished sophomore year of high school and it was summertime. My boyfriend at the time had just broken up with me for another girl named Emily. Emily and I had been friends and went to the same youth group together along with my now ex-boyfriend Andrew. Andrew ended up going to prom with Emily just a few days after he broke up with me. I was heartbroken and extremely mad at them both. I felt betrayed by them, but more so Emily because she was supposed to be my friend and uphold girl code. I wanted to get back at her and brainstorm ideas on how to do so with my best friend Marie. I suggested to Marie that we make a fake online profile of a boy, add Emily and catfish her. Marie was on board and one night when we were having a sleepover at her house, we made a fake account. We used photos of a mutual friend that we both knew but Emily didn't know. We named the boy Scott, added Emily and started talking to her. Some days Marie would talk to her and other days I would talk to her as Scott. We also got a fake number and gave it to Emily so that she could text Scott. Emily and Scott would talk all day, every day. Marie and I even took driver's ed over the summer and Emily was in our class. We would text her during class and watch her reactions when texting Scott. After a few weeks of talking, Emily told Scott that she loved him. However, Marie and I weren't satisfied, so we kicked things up a notch. So after Emily admitted to our catfish profile, Scott, that she loved him, we made Scott very sick and eventually die off. We made another fake account of Scott's sister and had her deliver the news to Emily about Scott's passing. Emily was devastated. She reached out to me as myself and her ex-friend and said that she needed a friend to talk to because she was so depressed from Scott's passing. She told everyone at church about it and we all prayed for her continuously. Eventually, Emily healed from Scott's passing and we went our separate ways. A few years later, she started dating a new guy and became pregnant. Marie and I knew about Emily's pregnancy, but we weren't close to Emily anymore, so we only saw photos through Facebook and Instagram. A few months passed and one night I was getting ready to go to bed when Marie texted me. Her text read in caps, "OMG, go look at Emily's Facebook." I was nervous but didn't think anything of it at the time. When I went to Emily's Facebook, I saw a photo of her baby in the most recent sonogram that she posted. The caption on the photo read, "Mommy loves you already, Scott," with a heart. Emily had decided to name her baby after Scott, the boy that she'd fallen in love with and passed away. The boy who was never real and only a catfish account that Marie and I had made to get back at her for breaking girl code. I still feel bad about it to this day. Story time about how a stranger disclosed his fetishes to me at the park. I was studying in the park by my house when a cute guy around my age wearing a sweatshirt from my college sat down directly next to me. I thought it was a little odd, especially during the pandemic, so I scooched in the other direction. That's when he started talking to me and introduced himself as Jose, all stuttery and not making eye contact. I thought it was so sweet that he was this nervous to talk to me, so I took the bait and said, "Oh, well hi, I'm Tamara." That's when he tells me that I have a pretty name and that he'd never guessed that would be my name. There was a long, awkward pause as I tried to think of what I could say in response to that, and that's when he goes, "So, what about a walk around the park?" I thought that was really gutsy to ask, but I kind of liked that. I said sure, packed up my books, and off we went. I figured it was the middle of the day, surrounded by other people, so the worst case scenario I could always ditch him if things got shady. We were walking and he was making more nervous small talk. I told him about my interests and background. He was like, "Wow, I didn't expect you to tell me so much about yourself." I wasn't sure how to feel about that, but alright. That's when he asked if he should tell me more about himself since it was almost 3 p.m. I assumed he had somewhere to be and I said sure. Then he said, "Maybe we should have this conversation at your place." That definitely threw me off and things only got weirder from here. Part 2 of how a stranger disclosed his fetishes to me at the park. I thought asking me, a total stranger, to stop what I was doing and take a walk with him was gutsy, but what he just said was sleazy at best. I nervously looked for non-confrontational outs and said, "Ahaha, we're definitely not going to my place." He said, "Oh, okay, sure. I didn't mean where you live, just meant the place. Where it is we're going? I'm sure you got something all worked out. Anyways, I can tell you about myself. Sure." He was looking around to see if other people were listening and he goes, "See, I'm really more of an ass kind of guy. I have a major spanking fetish. So if you got any skirts or..." I tuned out the rest as I started screaming in my head. Forget the non-confrontational exit, I instinctively went, "Stop, this conversation is over," turning to hightail it out of there. The guy ran after me going, "Wait, what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. The ad said you were cool with kinks and stuff, so I just thought, wow, I'm sorry." Alright, that slowed me down. I'm thinking, did he just say ad? Then he said, "Again, I'm so sorry, and look, this may not be the best time to ask, but am I still getting charged full-time even though you're leaving?" It turns out, poor guy was experiencing a touch of pandemic loneliness and hired a call girl off some personals online. She told him she'd be in the park wearing almost my identical outfit and described the features similar to mine. My husband and I are in our late 20s and have been married for 4 years. He finished college with a finance degree and thought he'd go into accounting, but quickly found out that it wasn't his passion. He bounced from jobs and ideas pre-COVID, but nothing really stuck. Since COVID, he hasn't attempted anything and said that after the pandemic ends, there will be a boom of jobs so he can find what he's passionate about. I've been working full-time and thankfully my job became remote. I've been paying the bills and keeping the food on the table. After the fiscal year closed, my work had done really well. We sell medical testing equipment, which was a big product of 2020. I was given a promotion and a pay raise, but also a small bonus. It was exciting because I could finally repair my purse and replace some shoes that were destroyed. When I told my husband, he seemed way more excited than me over this promotion. He went off about how he was going to redo his game area and get new systems. I was dumbfounded and got quiet because I couldn't believe what he was saying. He eventually went out and spent all of my bonus on a new computer. We got into a huge argument and he called me selfish for not being happy that he got to achieve his dream. He called me spoiled for being upset that I couldn't spend money on myself first. I called him ungrateful since I was the only one providing. He got mad and left the house saying that I'm making the money so I shouldn't throw it in his face that he doesn't have an income. Everyone thinks I overreacted to something that makes my husband happy. I've gotten so many texts about being an a-hole that I'm starting to wonder, am I? Part 2 of how my husband spent my bonus on himself. My husband went back to his parents and waited for my apology, which I never gave. Instead, I realized that I wasn't going to treat our relationship like a marriage if he wasn't, and I wasn't going to baby an almost 30-year-old. When he noticed I drained our joint bank account, he escalated things by saying that I was his and I could never leave him because he owned me. He also said that all of my success was his and without him, I would be a loser dropout. His family was even worse because I had already blocked them, so they made fake accounts using apps to hide their number and harass me. They said that I ruined their son's life and how he sacrificed everything to get me to where I am. They also said that throwing him to the side like this was disgusting and I deserved to rot. I provided all of this to my lawyer who recommended I get a restraining order and not engage but just keep the records. I separated our finances completely and changed banks. I told him that my husband is never allowed to access these accounts because I feel like he'd take it all and run. I changed my number and took myself off of social media. Part of me is broken our marriage came to an end over a computer. I must look like a fool to everyone for missing the warning signs. I lost a majority of my friends because they thought I was the selfish one since I was the one with the job. They also said that marriage is for better or worse and so on.
My name is Penelope, and ever since I can remember, I've always been the smartest one in the room. I'm not kidding. My IQ level is practically Einstein's, or even beyond it. I graduated from a special science high school when I was just 14. My dad, the doctor, always says that I get my brains from him. But no, that's not true. Intelligence is passed on from the mother, not the father. But I never really got to see how smart my mom was because she died when I was very little. Those who like and subscribe to our channel are geniuses too. Click now so you can continue watching this video. But my life turned completely upside down one day. I came home and found a man, woman, and 3 kids blocking the front door to the building. "Shut your mouth if you know what's good for you," the man said to the eldest kid. Then the woman pinched the youngest kid who started to cry. Apparently they lived here too. "What the hell do you want?" the man growled when he saw me. "Are you following us?" "Excuse me? I've lived in this building since I was born," I said to him. The doorman heard us. He quickly led them away to the elevators. "Sorry about that, miss," the doorman said. "That family just moved here last week. I think they live in the apartment above yours." I wanted to tell the doorman that they weren't a family. I saw the brown eyes of all 3 kids. The man and the woman had blue eyes. It's unusual for kids not to have blue eyes when both their parents have it. I completely forgot all about them when I got home because my dad told me some terrible news. There was a mysterious and highly contagious sickness going around. Because of this, my dad ordered me to stay home. He didn't want me to leave the house. I couldn't go to school, and I definitely couldn't go to Starbucks. We don't know much about this disease yet, he said. All we know is that it's deadly. So I'm putting you on house arrest for a few days, all right? I sighed, but I agreed. Dad knows best. He's a great doctor, after all. He said that a lot of people decided to stay home as well. He wanted to stay home with me, but he was needed at the hospital. At first, my house arrest felt like a vacation. But after a few days, I started to get edgy. I was getting so bored. There were just so many shows you can watch on Netflix. I wanted my Starbucks. I wanted to talk to my friends face to face. I remember leaning out the window that night, and I stared at the silent streets that were usually filled with the sounds of sirens, honking and cursing. That's when I heard that noise from upstairs. There was a loud bump and a crash. I heard the muffled sounds of a man shouting. Then I heard a loud snap, followed by a heartbreaking cry. Somebody was very angry and somebody was very scared. My curious nature wanted to find out what was going on. So I found a way to do it. I ran to my study table and pulled out the wires we were messing around with in school. It was actually a listening device with an earpiece and a separate transceiver. I found my old broken drone. It couldn't take videos anymore, but it could still fly. I taped the transceiver on the drone and flew it outside my window until it landed on the fire escape ladder upstairs. "Oh, my body hurts all over," I heard that woman say. Then she coughed. "I feel like I'm coming down with the flu." "I feel sick too," replied a man's voice. "But you don't hear me complaining, do you? We'll go ahead with the plan. Tomorrow we'll meet with a social worker to get the money for the kids. I swear those kids eat too damn much. I'm gonna bring them down to 1 meal a day. I don't want to spend that money for their food." My eyes flew open in shock. I listened to them all night. It was hard to understand them because everybody kept coughing and wheezing. They were all complaining that they couldn't breathe. Eventually, I pieced the whole story together. I was right. Those adults weren't the parents. They were foster parents, but they weren't using the money to take care of the kids. Those kids were just meal tickets for the adults. I wanted to tell my dad about it, but he just came home from the hospital then, and he barely heard anything I said. Instead, he told me that he kept losing patients because of the mysterious sickness. There was nothing I could do about the health crisis. The only thing I could do right now was to help those kids. I had to take a shower first, though. I haven't bathed in 2 days, and I smelled like a wet dog. That night, my dad went back to the hospital again. Then he sent me a message. "I love you, Penny. Sorry for being mushy. It's crazy here in the hospital. I just found out that there's a new group of people who are sick. They live in our building. Can you believe it? The parents are knocked out but stable, and the kids are in bad shape. The eldest girl kept asking about the bill. I told her not to worry about the bill. Can you imagine how scared she must be if she's thinking about how much that hospital was going to charge them?" Suddenly, something clicked in my brain. "I love you too, Dad. How many kids are there now?" He replied, "There are 2, a boy and a girl, about 6 and 7 years old, I think. Don't you leave the house, okay? There's a bad bug going around and you might catch it even if you're just walking around the building." I gasped and put on the earpiece again. This time I heard a little voice saying, "Linda?" I knew what to do. There was no other choice. I climbed out into the fire escape. I went into the apartment upstairs. I found the small boy in the middle of the room. He was curled up in a tight ball. "Hello, Bill," I said gently. He cried when he saw me and he kept asking for Linda. I told him my name was Penny and that I was his new friend. Then I asked him to play. After a while, we climbed down the fire escape together. I brought him back to my house. I put him on my bed. I stroked his hair for a while and then we both fell asleep. Bill still had tears on his cheeks. I think I did too. I woke up when I heard a knock on the front door. Our housekeeper opened it as I peeked out. I saw the police and I saw my dad too. The police told him about the nurse who called them up last night. The nurse told them about the new patient they had. It was a little girl who lived in the building. The little girl said that they left a little boy named Bill in their house. So the police came to find the boy, but they found something else. They found the drone with a sticker. My name and address were on it. I never saw my dad look that angry at me before. They found Bill on my bed. I tried to tell them about what I heard from the man and woman. I tried to explain that those foster parents weren't really taking care of those children, but nobody took me seriously. I knew that I broke the law, but I was just trying to save the kids from getting hurt. My dad told me that when the parents got discharged from the hospital, they were sure to file a case against me for kidnapping. I thought you were smarter than this, my dad said. They took Bill away. My dad pleaded with the police to let me off. He said that I had just had an overly curious mind. My dad grounded me for a long time. He took my phone away. I was only allowed to use my computer for schoolwork. No Instagram, no FaceTime, no Starbucks. I had no idea what was going on outside my house. When they finally got the mysterious sickness under control, I didn't know what had truly happened to the family upstairs. There was only one thing for me to do, and that was study. So I did, with all my might. I graduated college at 17. I took psychology and went straight to law school instead of med school. My dad was really disappointed that I wasn't going to be a doctor like him, but we kind of drifted apart since then. I finished my course load quickly, and I took the bar exam. I passed, of course, with flying colors, too. I finally moved out of the house this year when I was offered a position in a law firm. I just turned 20 years old this year. With everything that's happened, I never really stopped thinking about those kids, especially about that little boy named Bill. That's why I was so shocked when I was asked to help out on a case. There was a man and a woman who were charged with abusing children that they had in foster care. There were allegations of withholding food and violent punishments. That man and woman managed to foster a lot of children over the years. When I looked at the case file, I recognized the man and the woman right away. They were the couple who lived above us when I was still staying with my dad. The only problem was my law firm was hired to defend them. I went to the first meeting. The man was named Greg and the woman was Sue. They were a married couple. I wanted them to burn in 7 hells, but I couldn't show that until I found out where Bill was. I volunteered to take the formal statements of Sue. She was smoking a cigarette and looked so smug. I hated her so much. These charges started a long time ago, but it was never proven, she said. A few years ago, Greg and I got really sick. There was even this stupid little girl who told the police that we weren't feeding the kids. We didn't press charges because her father begged us not to. Of course, nobody believed her. That little girl seemed so delusional. I wanted to lose it, but I had to keep my cool. I wanted to smash the cigarettes in her stupid face. This woman was lying to me, but somehow I had to gain her trust. I heard about that story, I lied. It sounded so ridiculous back then. It was in the news, I think. So how are your kids? They must be quite grown up now. Sue laughed. You and I have client-lawyer confidentiality, right? You'd never give up my alibi. I nodded. It's all true, my dear, she said. I started to shake from head to toe. I tried to be calm so I could ask the next question. Where are the children now? Did you give them up? What's the name of your social worker back then? And that crazy criminal told me. She told me everything, believing that I was under oath to keep my silence forever. I walked out of the room with my head held high. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't save the kids before, but I could save them now. I went straight to my boss's office and gave him my resignation. Then I drained everything in my savings account and jumped on a plane. It took me a long time to find them. I found the little girl in another city. Her name was Linda. She was currently being fostered by an awful woman who had a lot of children in her house. Linda was the eldest one there. She was only 13, but she had to take care of all the younger kids. She cried when I told her that I would do anything to get her out of there. She also cried when she told me that the other little boy's name was Hank. He didn't survive. After they got discharged from the hospital 6 years ago, he was moved to another foster home, but he was still weak and he didn't survive. Linda and I went to find Bill. That little boy was lucky. He was actually adopted by a nice gay couple in the country. He's 9 years old now. When he saw me, he said that I look like a person he dreams about all the time. I cried when I heard that. Then I hugged him as tight as I could. I took Linda with me. When we got home, it was chaos. The law firm wanted to sue me, but they couldn't. Word got out to the media about what Sue and Greg really did. The reporters came after me, and I felt like it was my responsibility to tell the truth. The law firm was in hot water about defending people like that. Greg and Sue were convicted by the courts. They were sent to jail for the rest of their lives. The police are still tracking down the rest of the children. As for me, well, I lost my license to practice law. First and foremost, I broke lawyer-client confidentiality, and I talked to the media about the case. I didn't have any money left, and I needed to give Linda a proper home. So I went back to my dad, even if I didn't know what to expect from him. When he met me at the door, he looked at me for a long time. Then he put his arms around me. "I am so proud of you," he said. My dad was still practicing medicine. He was more than happy to take us in. Last night, after tucking Linda to bed in my old room, I went to have a talk with my dad. I've been thinking, I said.